We're going to rank all of the characters in Star Ocean 2 based on general combat prowess over the course of the game. I believe at one point I said I wouldn't do this, partially because I think it's kind of pointless, and well, partially because I think it's best to let people discover which characters are best on their own, so they're encouraged to try everyone. But when I looked up a video about this on YouTube, there was only results that applied to the original game. No shade to David, I love your content, but the fact is there's a few characters that got some crazy buffs and truly unfortunate nerfs. And I want to give a more balanced view of the best characters in the game and talk about some of the worst. I'm Solace, this is Solace and Dread. We produce analytical content as well as reaction videos focused on Square Enix, Nintendo, and Capcom publications. Okay, some caveats of this ranking. 1. This looks at everything combat related, in a general sense. A character is not the best character in the game if they spend the majority of the story being useless and then all of a sudden get ridiculously badass at the very end of the game. This isn't a Reddit argument only pointing out their viability when they have all the best stuff in the game, min-maxing optimal stats and strats. We're looking at the whole package. That way we can be inclusive of the casual players. 2. This does not factor story relevance at all. And if this video does okay, I'll do a separate story dedicated to characters ranked on story. Okay, either way I'm gonna do that because I love this game and I never shut up about it, so it's gonna happen. Number 3, it's important to remember that every single character in this game is viable, one way or another. Don't take this as some kind of gospel. Yes, there are some objective truths, but just because my opinion has Chisato Madison at the bottom of the list doesn't mean she isn't a decent character. And I guess I just spoiled that. Ranked dead last, or ranked 13, Chisato Madison. Yes, she is fun to play, more fun than the mages. She has a couple of moves that do some decent damage, including Rising Dragon and Tear Gas, but Tear Gas is extremely nerfed compared to the original version, and the long multi-hit moves that she has, like Rising Dragon, are not great in this version, seeing as you're left vulnerable and fighting ghosts. Unlike the mages, she has no utility and nothing really makes her stand out anymore. Her normals aren't anything to write home about either. She has short range, and also you get her so late in the game that you probably have a team that works already, and she's not going to be some added saving grace. Her damage output isn't anything special either, post-game or otherwise. Chisato took a huge hit in this version of the game, and I would sooner take anyone else over her, to be honest. Rank 12, Leon. Leon has the strongest offensive capabilities of any of the mages. Unfortunately, despite having some buffs, mages at their best are still no match for even the most basic melee fighter spam. He can destroy shields and do some decent damage late game, but he lacks utility, and he's not even the best at what he's good at, which is damage. So I have him lower because he has no real use, even on the assault menu. And he, like the other mages, is not fun to play, pretty much at all. Ranked 11, Celine Jules. She is actually alright. In the original game, I actually put her below Leon, but very early on in this version, she's very strong when she's in your party, especially when she's a required character in Cross Cave. She also has some buffs, getting Angel Feather, so she's at least useful in an assault role for a utility. But as I stated before, mages aren't really that fun to play, at least not in this version of Star Ocean. She has saved my ass, I can't deny that, but she's not a top tier character. She's just not. Especially considering her best post-game weapons take so long to obtain, like the very, very end of the Cave of Trials. So she is so outclassed so quickly that she's basically reduced to being training wheels. She's not great. Ranked 10th, Bowman. I have a personal bias against Bowman, but I can't deny his combat prowess. That is to say, he has one move that makes him extremely useful, and that's spamming the explosion pills. He can spam them and it racks up some pretty nasty damage. Pedal Dance has too long of an animation, and honestly, I've had enemies just kind of float out of the animation because it takes too long in between the hits. And his normals are very just okay, but they have bad range. Explosion Pills kind of saves him, and while it is one of the better moves in the game, as long as the enemy doesn't have elemental resistance to it, it's boring to spam that move. Like, it's not fun to play that way at all. It just doesn't feel good. He doesn't feel great to play compared to the others. Also, for a long time, his best weapon is fire-based, and that kind of puts a limit on him because he has a fire-based weapon on top of a fire-based move that he can spam in a boring manner. And ranked number 9, Noelle. Noelle was honestly the worst character in the previous version of the game, but with the inclusion of Assault, he's far more useful, with options as an added heal or a buff. He also has strong earth magic, which no one else really has. Also, one overlooked item is that he can wear heavy armor, including bloody armor. Say what you will about Noelle, but having him wear bloody armor let my party kill unlimited Gabriel at level 150 on universe difficulty with 0 prep. He can at least be used for bloody armor cheese. But he's a hybrid of offense and support magic, and he's not really that great at either. You also get him rather late, and he has relatively low int compared to some of the others, and he can't raise the dead. So, like the other mages, he's not really that fun to play, but he does have utility. So he's a little closer to the middle of the pack. Ranked number 8, Ashton Anchors. It hurts my soul to put him so low on this list, but this game is just not the same climate that it used to be anymore. In the original versions of the game, early game was really tough, and having Ashton in your party really helped out, even if he does start out pretty weak. But now the game really isn't as difficult, so outside of his use of piercing blades to break shields and a decent normal attack, he's not really needed. And he excludes you from getting 2 of the better characters in the game. Now, late into post-game, Ashton really steps it up, having access to insanely strong weapons. But I'd rather have several other characters that late into the game. Ultimately, despite his better than average normal attacks, his special attacks are kind of bad, and it takes too long for him to become a top tier contender. And yes, I understand that Dragon's Breath is pretty good, but they could also have an immunity to one of those 2 elements. He's just not that great. Rank number 7, Reyna. She carries the support role for a large portion of the game, having the best utility in heals, buffs, debuffs, and shield damage. She's honestly amazing. But late in post-game, there are a lot of strategies that make her inconsequential, and she really can be safely put into an assault slot if you know what you're doing. Also, mages still aren't really fun to play in this game. Reyna not being needed, as she was in previous versions, is very freeing though, because it allows experimentation. Ranked number 6, Ernest. Ernest feels so much better to play in this version compared to the originals. He's way better. Definitely the winner of the biggest glow up award. Now his range feels useful. Broken Heart, or as it's called, Bed of Roses, it doesn't pop up enemies out of your stun lock from your other characters anymore. Thousand Whips does a ton of damage, or is it Thousand Tails? He's more fun to play compared to much of the cast. His damage output pales in comparison to some of the others in post-game, but honestly, you can use him for most of the game without much of an issue. Rank number 5, Diaz. Diaz definitely fell a bit in ranks compared to the original showing, but he's still really good. He is strong the entire game, has decent defense and offensive capabilities, and his late and post-game weapons are amazing. Plus, you can get insane weapons for him and Claude very early, making the story parts of the game mostly trivial, which is why I place him above Ernest. One downside is that Air Slash and Chaos Sword got quite a bit of a nerf. One of the reasons I loved him in the original is Chaos Sword and Air Slash required very little MP, and it hits very hard and fast, taking the place of his rather bad normals. But they made his normals better, and they made these moves cost a lot in MP, and they perform slower and worse. Still, he can be your star player for the entire game if you want. I'll never not love Diaz, even if he's just a smidge worse than he used to be. Rank 4, Claude. Claude, suffers from main character syndrome, and that's not a bad thing. He's insanely strong for most of the game, but he does even out and make the other characters more viable. He even gets his phase gun back, which allows him to switch to long range placement instantly. A lot of people like to discount Claude because Mirror Blade isn't the great move it used to be, but Meteor Palm is awesome and the phase gun is really awesome. And his normals are top tier. I like him this way. Not to mention, he gets weapons that allow him to carry your party for much of the game through item creation. Seriously, he's a versatile powerhouse without being overpowered and allowing your other characters to shine. That's pretty great. Rank 3, Priestess. Priestess was always good, but now she's insane. She feels fun to play with a ton of abilities, and she's got some of the best attacks in the game. Some of them make her even kind of invincible. Not to mention how she is in the late game, getting honestly overpowered weapons. Priestess is part of what makes Star Ocean 2 special, having unique characters that play differently and still feel fun. Her downside is she burns through her MP really quickly and she's made of glass, so she tends to get one shot. But there is ways to account for that. It's funny, I was never really crazy about her until this version of the game. Her and Welch basically carried my party through the first playthrough. And that actually takes us into rank 2, Welch. Welch not only got the Glow Up Award alongside Ernest, but she's one of the best characters in the game. She's actually viable from the moment you get her, and on my first playthrough, she joined and basically never left my party. She too is a bit too fragile, but not as bad as Priestess, and she's fun to control. Slappity Slap does a ton of damage. It's really fun. I don't know why, but it feels so good. She has good range, and she has moves that have a ton of shield damage, like a ton. And her post-game weapon is unmatched, literally. She's a freaking monster. But there is one character that surpassed everyone in terms of utility, damage, general viability, all of it, and that is Opera Vectra. She's the best character in the game. She was already really good in the original, but now it's hard to dispute. Not only are her normals really fast, and her aerial normal is the best in the game, but Healing Star allows you to completely unincorporate the healers. She does insane damage for most of the game, and all at a safe range. She also tends to stay alive a little longer than Priestess and Welch, but I think part of that is due to her long-ranged attacks. Her damage might taper off in the post-game compared to some of the others, but Opera will carry your party to the promised land. Opera is the best character overall in Star Ocean 2. Ultimately, this is just my and many others' opinions, but I feel good about this list. But tell me, am I wrong? How would you rank them? I love talking about this game, and that's why I keep making videos on it. I have more in the chamber, so strap in. Like I said in the beginning though, every single character in this game is viable. They all have merits and weaknesses, and the balance in the characters is one of the strong suits. So play with whoever the hell you want. Don't listen to me. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon, and long live the Turtle Kingdom.